and thank you for joining us at BATV's Falto Studios inside Batavia High School. My name is Kathy Balcazar, editor of the Kane County Chronicle newspaper, and I will be your host and moderator today for this episode of Viewpoint. Viewpoint is a roundtable talk show that highlights a specific topic that is being discussed in our community. In today's show, we will discuss the presidential elections and what concerns our young adults have. Here to participate in this discussion are Kevin Steiger, a student at Northern Illinois University who's also involved with the National Guard, Rachel Goodman, a student at Indiana University, Anna Gilardi, a Batavia High School senior, Colin Wright, a 5th grade teacher at Naperville District 204, and Sophie Shahmerzadi, an incoming freshman at Batavia High School. Thank you all for joining us today. Our first question, and I'm going to start with Sophie, is why do you or why don't you think it's important to pay attention to U.S. politics, including the U.S. presidential race, as a citizen of this country?
I believe as a citizen of this country that following the presidential election and anything to do with politics really helps you to know what's going on in our government, and knowing who our world wants as a leader or what direction we're heading can help you know where we're going in the government. And I also believe that for young people such as myself who are not of voting age to listen to the politics and know what they want to elect in a leader in the future can help them along.
Well said. Colin, how about you?
I do think it's important for two primary reasons. One being that as the millennial generation, we're about to be taking over the country, as awkward as it sounds. But we're going to be taking it over, and we're going to be in charge of everything one day, and we kind of need to know what we're doing in order to be able to do that. I think the other reason is that our generation is amazing at social media, and social media, especially in this election currently, has been so massive for how information gets out there about candidates, about policies, about platforms. And as the people that are good at using those, we need to make sure that we're using that power so that we can get our voices out there and actually change our country.
Sure. Thank you. Anna, how about you?
Well, like Sophie and Colin said, I really do believe that it's better and best for young ages and old ages of people to follow every presidential election, anything that's going on in the government, because of the social media, because of how some things are put out there that may be misinterpreted, and going and doing the research is really, really important so we get it right and we know what's going on in the world, what's going on in our country, as far as the platforms of candidates, like you said, as far as the policies that they have, and really researching will it'll take it to another level. Instead of just seeing what you see on TV, it'll be better for the generation now to learn how to research and find out what these candidates really feel.
Definitely. Thank you. Rachel, how about you?
I think especially starting at a young age is really important, because people just say, oh, I'll wait and vote in the next election or whatever, but people don't realize how much of an impact it might make on their life. They're like, it's one, president, they make, decisions about things that don't really matter to me. But I just think it's really important because it's one person running the whole country. They make big decisions. It may not impact your, life today or whatever, but, it really does impact the community as a whole. And I think it's really important to put your decision out there because, every vote counts.
Everybody's got to be engaged. Kevin, how about you?
Well, this year, politics has surged up to the biggest thing in the world right now, because different presidential candidates such as Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump are just the number one things on the news radar constantly. So it's very important to follow these things because we gotta know what their agenda is, what their foreign policies are. And when it comes to think about it, next November when we vote and when the inauguration comes along, well, that's our new president, and that's our next future for the next 4 years.
Yeah. It was mentioned in the introduction to the show, Kevin, that you serve in the Illinois National Guard. As a member of the National Guard, do you feel particularly proud to have the right to vote in the United States? And do you feel an obligation to vote because you're in the Guard?
Actually, well, I do feel like it's very important for me to vote, because not just because I'm in the Guard, but I'm also a citizen of this country as well.
Right.
Well, a lot of things that people don't know is that we have a very low vote
Voter turnout.
Yes,
Yeah.
like in 2012, the last voting turnout was 42% of the United States actually voted in that election.
And usually that's of registered voters, so that's even fewer than the total population, if that would be the case in that case, because usually they'll say the percentage of registered voters, and not even everyone's registered to vote.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I find that completely, like, just insane, because just imagine that number was higher and what the different turnout could be. Because I know between Romney and Obama, Romney was very close.
There have been a lot of close elections locally at the Chronicle, not talking about presidential elections, but local referendums or local races for perhaps a village board member or something like that. There have been races in this area in recent years decided by as low as 3 votes. So if people think their vote doesn't matter, we've editorialized at the paper that, in fact, your vote could have mattered in some of these local races, and you shouldn't think that it doesn't matter in an overall sense because that mentality doesn't really get anybody any further.
Definitely. Take a look at the Iowa caucus and what happened there.
Yeah. Rachel, the next question is for you. Debates, interviews, and polling have been taking place for more than a year in regards to the November presidential election. It's been a lot. What types of election activities have you seen or participated in on the Indiana University campus?
Well, we had a really big thing happen in April. Bernie Sanders actually came to IU and spoke. He was in our auditorium, which probably seats about 3,000 to 4,000 people, and I think 10,000 people showed up, so not everybody got in.
Yeah.
And so, he gave his speech once, and then I think he went outside and it was raining, and he gave the speech again. So everybody, and I think a lot of the college millennials were pro Bernie Sanders, and a lot of people at my school were. So, he got a lot of people to come, and, he spoke, and that was just a really big thing to just have at our campus. Other than that, people that work at the Indiana Daily Student, which is our newspaper, I know a friend that works there, and they're sending people out to the Republican convention like now, and so people are covering it during the summer. Other than that, there's like organizations on campus that we have, like Democratic students, Republican students, they come together, like Students for Trump, Students for Hillary, things like that. So there's a lot of like opportunities, and obviously voting, there's setups all around campus, and if, like, since I'm a resident in Illinois, I have to do like an absentee ballot, so you have to, figure that out in advance, things like that. So there's a lot of opportunities to get involved, and there's really cool things there.
Would you say that it does seem like a majority of the students are engaged in the election on some level, or is it really hard to tell overall?
I think it's really hard to tell, especially because there's like 40,000 people at Indiana University. So, and my friends are only very, small amount of people. But I have friends that, don't care, and I have friends that are super, super involved. So it really just depends. Me, I'm kind of in the middle, like I'm involved and I'm going to vote. But, I'm not one that'll just like go on Facebook and just like make rants. And there's people like that, so it really depends, but there are a lot of people involved at my school. So.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but you said you are taking the step to try to vote absentee in November.
Yes.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, thank you.
I started voting when I was in high school, and I've been out of high school for more than 10 years now, and one of the best votes I feel like I ever cast was in the 2004 presidential election when Kerry was running against Bush, and I was in Madrid, Spain, and I cast my vote absentee for Madrid, Spain. So I felt like I made my voice heard just by going through the process anyway. Anna, next question for you. What have you been learning about the fall election at Batavia High School? And is it something you've discussed in class? Do you talk about the candidates with your friends or family?
Well, at my school, I took American History first semester, and we did talk a lot about, even though it was last year in the fall, we did talk a lot about the candidates, what their platforms were, and our teacher even had us take a test that kind of it asks you a bunch of questions about the economy, economics, about your social standings, and this whole quiz gave you percentages of what candidates you agreed with most.
Sure.
So it was really helpful, but I do see a lot of the times that our teachers don't get very involved in the students in the politics, so they don't give any kind of influence on us. And personally, I get to vote this year, so I'm really, really excited about that. But I think because of that reason, and she had a class of juniors that was going to be voting the next year, she didn't really give us a lot of information about who she was voting for.
Sure.
And I don't think any teachers really do that around here. But as far as friends and family, I think that's more of an open topic and subject. I have a lot of good conversations with my grandparents, with my dad, with my mom about politics, and some not so good with like my little brothers who don't really get it yet, and my brother who wants to vote Kanye 2020. So those topics become diverse, but I do enjoy talking about it a lot with my friends and family, especially because we're not allowed to do it at school.
And you said you're really excited to vote for the first time. Can you talk, is it the first time?
Yes.
And can you say, explain why you're so excited?
I'm excited just because I feel like I'm going to be able to make a difference toward who gets elected. Although I was kind of more of a Bernie, I was behind Bernie, and I don't know if he'll be in the general election. I don't really agree with the fact that if you go and vote for someone, you have to identify as that party. That kind of discourages me, but I am excited to vote so I can make a difference, because like you said earlier, one vote can make a difference. And
Yeah.
I feel like that's what I'm excited to do.
Well, that'll be a fun moment for you
Yeah.
for sure. As an election judge in the past, I stopped being an election judge once I started working in journalism full time. We had a lot of people who, during the primaries, when they had to declare Republican or Democrat, who would get very uppity because they didn't want to have to say which party they affiliated with. And not every state is like that. I'd wonder if Illinois is going to stay that way for a really long time, because I do think that perhaps, people could argue now more than ever that divisive party line really puts you into one camp or the other, and maybe they prefer not to declare during the primary. Colin, next question is for you. How interested are your District 204 students in Naperville in the 2016 presidential election? Why are they or aren't they interested?
My students personally, I cannot speak for all of 204, but my kids were. They were very interested, and one of the primary reasons was because, unfortunately, they were becoming one of the issues. I teach a very diverse group of kids, and that's one of the reasons I love 204, is because there's so many different ethnicities and religions and races all in one district. And I have kids who are Muslim. I have kids who are Hispanic, and they turn on the TV and they hear some pretty hateful things being said about people like them. And they would come to school and they say, I'm scared. I don't know what's going to happen when this person becomes president, if my family is going to be allowed to stay here anymore.
Yeah.
And it's a scary thing as their teacher to hear them and say, and I'm not able to say, it'll be all right, don't worry about it, because I don't know. And that's one of the reasons I think a lot of them are really interested, is because they're at that age now, because I teach 10 to sometimes 12-year-olds, depending if they're on the older end. They are forming their own opinions, and they're able to pay attention more, and they're able to understand a little bit more about what's going on. So when they hear some of this hateful rhetoric, they're understanding what is really being said, and they're taking stands on it.
Even though you might not be able to truly address what's going to happen because it's unknown at this time, are you able to use that kind of statement, I'm scared about what could happen, as a jumping off point for a bigger conversation about the election? And if so, what do you guys talk about at that point?
Absolutely. I try to, unfortunately, we usually teach about the political system in March.
Okay.
And so next year, I'm probably going to have to shift my stuff around a little bit because of the November election. But
Sure.
we talk about the power of one voice, and how your vote is your freedom of speech. And they're 10, and sometimes they don't fully understand how powerful it is, but they're already forming their own opinions. One of my favorite discussions we had as we were talking about the election process, and some students took that as a way to talk about their own opinions. And one of my students who didn't fully understand politics came out and said, I don't really get politics, but all I know is that Donald Trump is mean, and you cannot be president and be mean at the same time. And I was,
Sure.
that's okay. And then at the other end, you have kids who are like, I like Ted Cruz because I like his economic policies with foreign
There you
trade.
go.
And so you get both ends of the spectrum, and it's like, you understand what you're talking about. I can't fight that.
Yeah. And just for some of us who aren't in the educational system all the time at this point, do the kids coming into your 5th grade classroom, do they know about the different branches of government or about the Constitution at that point? Or might that still be being introduced to them?
Actually, I'm the one that introduces
There
it.
you go, right there.
5th grade is right around the time where we start. That's when in Illinois at least, it becomes more historical based. Whereas in previous years, it's mainly about your community and about geography, and then in 5th grade is when we start to really talk about the history of America. And so usually around the January to March region is where you get to the American Revolution and the Constitution. So that's when we usually address the American government.
There you go. Important stuff.
I know.
And in some
fun.
cases, not always taught as much as it could be from different reports you read.
Yeah.
So glad it's getting taught in your class right now. Sophie, next question is for you. Where have you been learning about the candidates in the presidential election? Newspapers, TV, social media, talking with friends, somewhere else? Fill us in.
Well, when it comes to the election, it's a very highly debated topic, and you can go almost anywhere and find someone willing to talk about it. It's all over social media and TV and newspapers and anything of the sort. So it's very easy to get information, but it depends on what kind of information you want, to where you might go. When it comes to school, we didn't talk about politics much because teachers don't want to show any bias to who they're voting for or anything such as that.
And that might kind
So,
of feed into what Anna was talking
yeah, like
about,
what
maybe the
Anna said.
hesitancy there, yeah.
That they don't want to make anything uncomfortable for students who might believe something else. So they tend to steer clear of that subject. But I know among the students in my grade that the candidacy and everything to do with the election was a highly debated topic, and a lot of kids would be talking about it, whether we were in a class or at lunch, that a lot of people would be talking about it.
Yeah. I would like to see what everybody has to answer on that question. Colin, where are you getting the most information these days about the presidential election?
I'm a big Reddit fan,
Okay.
and I think the cool thing about Reddit is it's a really easy way to get both sides. You can subscribe to subreddits that are really liberally influenced, and you can also go to ones that are more conservative, and it's actually nice and balanced that way if you choose to make it that. I think that's unfortunately one of the problems with the internet is sometimes we accidentally go for the ones that like
Feed into-
appease, it appeases our, like, oh, I'm liberal and I want to hear only liberal things, or I'm conservative and I only want to hear conservative things. So if you choose to, you can use the internet to get both sides, which is really cool,
Yeah.
especially Reddit.
Anna, how about you? Where you learning about the presidential election?
Well, it's all over, and since I do a lot of news stories and I do look up a lot of things, like it's everywhere. It's on CNN, it's on USA Today, it's on every website. It's, in my school, we're talking about it. It's on social media, like Sophie said. But a big thing with that is I think we're getting a lot of our information is coming from social media because this election is so unique and so different than other elections. And I feel like sometimes the information we're being fed is one-sided, like Colin said, and we choose to hear what we want to hear. And I think that's where I'm really researching and finding out what these candidates' platforms are is super important, because we are being fed so many one-sided views from all these different media sources.
I like what's being said so far, trying to see both sides, trying to do due diligence in the research. Rachel, how about you? Where are you learning about the election?
Probably mostly social media, and like Anna said, it's it's the people that are on like your Facebook or your Twitter are people you're friends with, and so they most of the time have similar views as you, and so you're seeing what they're posting from whatever news site and things like that. Other than that, I actually do watch the news with my parents, so
Okay.
that's good when I'm home. So probably TV or social media is where I go.
All right, and Kevin, how about you?
Well, before it even started, the whole presidential race, the first time I ever heard about I heard about it a long time ago, but it got more debatable when I started taking a journalism class at NIU, and it was media convergence and how the concept of gatekeeping comes into play
Yeah.
between both sides of being conservative or liberal. So when it came to that, I became more interested in the presidential way of the race.
Yeah.
And after taking that class, I've just been seeing more and more, because more as the campaign goes longer, like to see more students around me be more immersed in political issues and things like that. So I see kids supporting Bernie Sanders and wearing buttons and stuff around campus, same for the other candidates as well. And besides just the classroom itself, I just see on social media every day, from BuzzFeed, just everywhere now.
Any place, any instance where you guys think you've seen too much or where it's gone too far, or is it hard to say that when it comes to a presidential election where that is one of the biggest topics being discussed right now? Any examples you guys can think of?
Well, I personally sometimes go on Facebook and I might repost a video about something, and not too long ago I did repost something about like how if we could re-elect Obama, it would be really cool if we could, because I personally really like Obama as a president. And after I reposted that, and I didn't make any like snide comments about it or anything, I had people that I knew that I was friends with on Facebook that are more, I would say more liberal view, and they're a more conservative view, and they commented some pretty rude things about like my views and how I felt about it. So I think that's when it gets to be too far, is when people start butting heads. Like if you have different views, I think it's really important for you to accept them and kind of see from the other side, like Colin was saying earlier. So I think that's when it kind of steps over the line.
That's interesting, and I'd wonder among your age group whether that's something that you guys think is easy or difficult to do, because when people have conflicting points of view, you can have a discussion and still learn from each other, even if you don't change your mind. But a lot of times, and maybe today more than ever, like we've kind of touched upon, there's this inability to even have that dialogue, to have the back and forth, because people are so on their side that they can't even hear about the other side. In the case of your friends, do you feel like that was an opportunity to have a broader discussion, but that just wasn't what happened?
Yeah, I feel like a lot of times when my friends have conflicting views, you know, depending on the person too, because, you know, that always kind of factors into how you have a discussion. But I feel the conversation could have gone somewhere, but I feel as if the person was kind of just attacking and didn't really, a lot of problem with my generation talking about politics is we don't back up our information well enough. And I feel like that's where the research comes in, and it's really hard to have a discussion with someone who doesn't do that research and who doesn't follow it as much. And you have to really, to have that strong of an opinion and have a good discussion, you really have to know like what you're talking about.
And to piggyback off of that,
Sure.
sometimes when people don't have evidence and they kind of see themselves kind of in a rut when it comes to trying to back themselves up, they accidentally get personal. And they start to attack the person as opposed to actually have a discussion. And that's when it really goes over the line, because now you're just making it about something that has no relation to the topic whatsoever.
Exactly, yeah. Anybody else have anything to say on that topic?
I also think it's really hard to like back yourself up with, you know, one thing that you saw somewhere, because I think, like you said, there's so much out there that you know, it's hard to know what's true and what's not, you know. So if somebody uses, you know, one little clip and they're like, this is this, and you know, you're wrong, and like, I just think it's hard, especially with the media and like everything that's been being out there. Like she said, like you gotta research, you gotta make sure, like, you know, before, you know, pointing fingers.
Yeah, probably one of the ugliest examples of that in this election, you know, arguably could be the fights that took place outside of UIC Pavilion when Trump was supposed to give a speech and all the demonstrators were out there. And,
Yeah.
you know, to demonstrate peaceably is one thing, but when you're going to start getting physical, then it changes the whole argument, because now it's not really about words or thoughts. Now it's gotten physical and it's taken to a whole different level.
Yeah, I was at USC when that happened.
Really?
So when I was in the area, you can just feel like the negativity of the atmosphere around you, because it's like literally just one, like blue versus red, basically. You really just think about it that way. It's just like the hostility toward each other is like, we should try to debate this in a civil manner, not in
Right.
violence.
Yeah.
And the way we see it right now, it's just completely, everyone's attacking each other personally, based on race, religion, things like that, and it shouldn't really even be a thing in general.
Yeah, well said. This is a question for the entire group. You might have to put your thinking cap on for this one. What are you looking for in the next president of the United States? Anybody care to take that one first?
I'll go ahead.
Rachel, go ahead.
I just think, you know, I'm not going to make any accusations of myself, but I really would like just a genuine person, like first and foremost. There's been accusations, been made against, somebody being prejudiced or discriminatory or, just mean, like, little kid
One
things.
student
And
said.
it's true. And it's hard when somebody isn't thinking about the greater good of society and they're thinking about maybe themselves, being fame or like the power that they'll get. And yes, they're going to be able to make decisions, but you want them, to be for the greater good, and you want them to be like genuinely a, good Samaritan. So.
Yeah.
And I believe that I hope they would be like an honest person, and that any direction they're wanting to go or any choice they're going to make, that they would let the people in on what they might want to do, or that they are willing to do what the people ask for. Whereas if someone wants something done in a certain situation, like, okay, we need to get the government involved with this, that they would be willing to at least look at the point the person is making.
Sure. Anyone else want to answer that question?
Kind of piggybacking off of Sophie, like she said, for the people, and one of the things with America is by the people, for the people. I really think that a leader should embody the people and be who the people want to be in office and do the things that the greater good wants to do. The greater part of society wants one thing. I think that a leader should support that and be truly the candidate that the people want.
And Kevin, you had something you wanted to add.
Ideal quality that a president should have is to unify the people. Because really, when you really think about it, we should be waging a war on social issues, or just issues in general that we have, not on each other.
Right.
Because when you really think about it, between Democrat, Republican, we're still living in the same country, and we have to work together to make it function.
That's right. Colin?
Now that it's down for it being basically Hillary Clinton versus Donald Trump, I'm looking, and I think there's a lot of people that are like me, I'm looking for someone who's not Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump.
Yep.
Yeah. To be absolutely honest, I think that one of the things I'm really excited for about this election is now that it's down to these two candidates, the third-party candidates now are really starting to pick up steam. After Bernie Sanders unofficially dropped out, I guess, Jill Stein, who's the Green Party candidate, and Gary Johnson, who's the Libertarian candidate, their donations went up, their popularity went up, and so I think for the first time since like Ross Perot, we're going to see some pretty strong third-party candidates, and we might actually have 4 people up on a debate stage, which would be really interesting, and it would get more than just the business-as-usual candidates possibly into the White House.
No matter how you view it, most people in the business world will say competition's a good thing. So it's exciting just to think about the idea of a third party having more play in a presidential election in this country. Kevin, did you want to add something to that?
Well, just going off of what he said basically was, third party is becoming more relevant now because the unpopularity rate of both candidates right now is very high.
Right.
And as I've been seeing in the polls recently, that Gary Johnson, he has been the first third-party candidate to reach over a 10% approval rate in like years with third party. So that's pretty awesome to see.
Kind of going off of that point, do you guys think that money plays too much of a factor in our current elections? Particularly, and if you're not familiar with it, there was a Supreme Court decision, Citizens United, that, for the most part, basically made the amount of money you can donate to a presidential election unlimited, and you don't even have to say who you are. I don't know, what do you guys think? Sophie, you want to answer that one?
Well, it's kind of insane. Like, what are all these people with a lot of money going to do? For instance, if one person was to donate so much money to this one person's campaign, that gives them so much of a leg up that it might be unfair to the other candidates.
Sure. Colin, you want to add anything on that?
I think yes and no.
Okay.
Because I do agree Citizens United was a horrendous thing, and it makes absolutely no sense in the terms of how our country is moving forward. But then you have an independent Jewish socialist from Vermont who basically completely funds his campaign through like small $15 to $20 donations and like a handful of unions. So, and he was taken fairly seriously. So I think that yes, Citizens United was horrible and that we need to get money out of politics, but at the same time, it's pretty amazing what you can do with just some social media and people who actually stand behind your message.
Sure. And you guys want to add to that? All right. Next question, and we're going back in time for this one potentially, but looking to see whether any of you has a favorite president. Anna.
Well, I thought about this, and I thought about it plenty of times, but I have to base this answer off of how long, like, the presidents and, like, the era in which I've been living and, like, been able to understand politics. So even though I've studied plenty of presidents, I don't think any of them could be my favorite because I really haven't lived in the era that they've been president. So I have to say Barack Obama, and I say that because I do stand behind a lot of his messages, his policies, foreign and in the nation. He gave us free health care, and I know a lot of people might have different views on that, but personally I think that is something that's so great because, you know, other nations have that too. You know, Canada, UK, places like that. I also really like Michelle Obama because she has been such an inspiration to the country. She has done a lot for the country as the First Lady, and it's not just the president making a difference. And when I express my views about Obama and how, like, I really do enjoy having him as a president and I respect him, I do get some, like, you know, feedback from that that's not so good, some pretty negative comments, but he has done so many things for the country. He's brought unemployment back down to like 5% now. It was 10% when he was elected in 2008, brought it down to 8% when he started his second term, and brought it back down to 5%. And actually, believe it or not, crime rate has gone down 20% since he became president. So I really do like him, support him, and wish he'd be in office one more time, but he's definitely my favorite president.
Thank you, Anna. Anybody else got a favorite president?
I have one who doesn't receive a whole lot of love.
Who's that?
I'm a big fan of Dwight Eisenhower.
And why?
Dwight Eisenhower, I think, kind of embodies what the Republican Party used to be and the good that can come from Republicans. I'm a Democrat, but I still love my Republican buddies out there. Eisenhower basically created the entire interstate highway system. He started NASA. He gave funding to science education. He expanded Social Security. Like, he did some pretty awesome things as president. And unfortunately, because he was in the military and kind of like one of the main reasons we won World War II, that kind of overshadows his presidency, and he did some pretty cool things there. But yeah, I like Ike.
Thank you for sharing that. How about the rest of you guys? Anybody you want to name?
I think it's just hard to know because all of us, I mean, you know, are young, relatively young.
Sure.
And to know exactly, you know, how they were in office, you know, I think it's just more push for us to look for somebody good in the future.
There you go. There you go. I got Teddy Roosevelt on the mind, but I'm going to a couple national parks next month. So got to thank him for his help making those things happen. All right, well, we're down to the end of the program, and I wanted to get final thoughts from each of you. We'll start with you, Sophie. Final thoughts on the presidential election in November, and you can go anywhere you want with that.
Well, I believe that it's going to get so much more attention as it goes on, and I'm just hoping that it goes well for what the country needs, that we'll get the candidate who is the most willing to do what's right.
Thank you. Colin?
My final thought is just vote. I mean, it's more important than we think. You know, we sometimes have this opinion in this country that our vote doesn't matter and that it's just a rigged system. Why should I even bother? If you have that opinion and then you don't do anything to try and change it, then you're accidentally saying, yeah, I'm okay with the status quo. So if you vote, I don't care if you vote Republican, Democrat, Green, Libertarian, even if you vote write-in and you just write in someone that you know, I mean, at least you're going out there and voting, which is really far more important than anything you could do in November besides Thanksgiving.
There you go. Anna?
Well, personally, for November, I'm very excited because I get to vote for the very first time. And even though the candidates may have not come down to who exactly I wanted to, you know, put my vote in for, I will still be excited to vote no matter what. I really think that people do need to do your research and vote because you're not going to make a difference without doing that. And really, if you're going to have like an intelligent conversation with anyone about politics and about the election in November, do your research. It's super important, especially because this election truly is going to go down in history, and it's going to be one to remember.
Thank you, Anna. Rachel.
I think especially like piggybacking off of the research thing, just to be able to talk to other people without like being violent, or pointing fingers or anything. Definitely have your own opinion, strong opinion, so you can vote, but, be open to other things, be open to hearing, other people's messages, because, like Kevin said, we're all one country, we all have to vote for one person, or we're all going to, elect one person. So just make sure you do your research, especially millennials, because we're, the future. And, definitely it's important but I feel like adults already know that, and they're already, like, they've voted in the past, so it's kind of like a routine for them, and I think we're just kind of like, oh, it doesn't really matter right now, just to get yourself out there and vote.
Get out there and put in your vote. Kevin?
Well, that's my biggest opinion about the election, just from this year, because every other year, like from 2012, 2008, it didn't seem to be like a huge movement to begin with, but what I'm trying to say is, I don't think people should have to identify themselves as Republican or Democrat, because we can have mixed views of different ordeals, because that's just dividing the people up more. And while this country, with all the events going on, we don't need to be divided any more than we should be right now. And yeah.
Thank you to all of our guests on this episode of Viewpoint. To watch previous episodes of Viewpoint, you can go to the BATV website at www.mybatv.com. If you have a topic you would like to see discussed on a future episode of the show, you can contact us at 630-937-5413 or email us at info@mybatv.com. I'm Kathy Balcazar. See you next time on Viewpoint.